Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFO DFS Report. It is Tuesday, February the 4th. Happy Tuesday to everybody. We have a massive slate today, but DK, I guess, kind of did us a favor for the show. So if you didn't see my tweet, DraftKings broke today's slate down from a 14-game slate into a 10-game main slate and a 4-game late slate. On FanDuel is a 14-game slate. So on today's show, we're only going to cover the 10-game DraftKings main slate. But if you are playing on FanDuel and you want all the information for all 14 games, or you're playing the late DraftKings slate, I did do charts for the 10-game slate, which we'll cover today or right now. Then I did the 4-game late slate on DraftKings, then the entire 14-game slate on FanDuel. Now, funny enough, the overall number one line is on the late slate. So the things really got broken up and are going to be completely different whether you're playing DraftKings or FanDuel tonight. So unfortunately, it doesn't do us a lot of good on this show. It kind of makes things a little bit more difficult, but we'll break down the first 10 games of the night, and you'll be kind of on your own for the last 4, but you got charts for them on DraftKings and FanDuel. So best of luck there. Let's get into the starting goalies. So we got Andrei Vasilevsky confirmed to get the start for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're expecting to see Linus Ullmark return to the Ottawa Senators crease this evening after a lengthy layoff for him. Alex Nedeljkovic back between the pipes for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It'll be Nico Dawes' season debut for the New Jersey Devils. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen projected to get the start for the Buffalo Sabres. The Columbus Blue Jackets will go with Elvis Merzlikins. This game looked like it could have been a lot of fun, right? It had an over-under of 6.5 this morning. Tage Thompson's out. Kirill Marchenko's out. Zach Werenski's out. The Blue Jackets are missing their top 3 scorers. Tage Thompson, leading scorer on the other side, gone as well. Tons of injuries in this game. It's going to be interesting to break that one down. Jeremy Swayman gets a start for the Boston Bruins. It'll be Marc-Andre Fleury for the Minnesota Wild. Logan Thompson versus Sergei Bobrovsky. In Washington, the Islanders will roll with Ilya Sorokin, who has been red hot. Projected to see Aiden Hill for the Vegas Golden Knights, although unconfirmed. Caught me off guard here, but Eric Comrie, I bet on the Jets first thing this morning. Like, man, this makes no sense. They're like plus 100 at home, and then Eric Comrie got the start. I'm like, this makes sense. Somebody knew that. Eric Comrie likely to get the start, although the Jets didn't officially name a starting goalie. Hellebuyck was in the starters crease. Eric Comrie was the first one off, so indications are that it's going to be Comrie, but just keep an eye on it, I suppose. They wouldn't confirm him, so we'll see. Petr Kochetkov likely to get the start for the Carolina Hurricanes. It'll be Jordan Binnington for the St. Louis Blues as Zach's Edmonton Oilers visit St. Louis. Projected to see Stuart Skinner. Do you think there's a chance it could be a Calvin Pickard game tonight?
Could be. I would think Skinner tonight, Pickard tomorrow, though.
Okay. Dustin Wolf confirmed for the Calgary Flames. It'll be Joseph Woll coming off a great performance over Zach's Edmonton Oilers on the weekend. He gets the start for the Leafs. It'll be Karel Vejmelka likely to get the start for the Utah Hockey Club. Sam Erison for the Philadelphia Flyers. Thatcher Demko for the Vancouver Canucks. Mackenzie Blackwood projected to get... I thought Blackwood was likely, but Blackwood projected to get the start for the Colorado Avalanche. The Seattle Kraken are likely to go with Joey LaCour. It'll be Cam Talbot for the Detroit Red Wings. Alexander Georgiev back between the pipes for the San Jose Sharks. It'll be Sam Montembeault for the Montreal Canadiens. And then in the final game of the night, you've got John Gibson for the Anaheim Ducks and Jake Ottinger for the Dallas Stars. Let's start at the tippy top, Zach. We've got the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Ottawa Senators. The Lightning are minus 172 home favorites. The Senators coming in on the tail end of a back-to-back after beating the Nashville Predators last night. 3.3 implied total for the Lightning. Matchups in this game, pretty modest pace. Not great matchups across the board here for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Decent matchups for the top 6 of the Sens. The Senators have definitely been better defensively as of late. The way the lineup is currently constructed, it grades out absolutely tremendously. Really, really good defensive numbers across the board, particularly this top line, just ridiculous stuff. So you take a look at the overall rankings. Tampa 1 still grades out near the top just because they are super, super good and see a ton of ice time. There's not a great power play matchup for them either, though. The Sens PK has been playing extremely well. But do you have any interest in going to the Lightning, given that it is a back-to-back for the Sens? And you know, you've obviously got Ullmark coming back after a lengthy absence. They're still drawing a decent chunk of ownership tonight at 7.5%, which is about the 6th or 7th highest ownership overall. What's your plan here with the Lightning?
Yeah, I got some interest here in playing the Tampa Bay Lightning for sure. You know, I like the second half of a back-to-back here. You know, I think first and foremost, like, we got to talk about how good the Ottawa Senators have been defensively as of late. Their defensive metrics have been tremendous. Over their last 10 games, only 1.78 goals against per hour at 5-on-5. You take a look at the line stats for the Senators, and wow, just really, really solid numbers all across the board here for the Senators. So, you know, 7.5% I think is pretty fair here for the Tampa Bay Lightning top line. I think I'm comfortable meeting the field at that number. I don't know if I'm going to go too far over top of it. I mean, I think I could probably get to 10% pretty easy in my 20 max that I'm doing here tonight. And I think that's the route that I'll go. Obviously very expensive here to full stack this top line, $23,800. We've seen a little bit of a drop off in the offense here from Braden Point and Jake Gensel over their last 20 games. Braden Point only 2.2 points per hour. Jake Gensel 2.8 points per hour. Still modest shot volume from both of those guys, but Nikita Kucherov goes without saying, continues to be the big driver on that line, and that's why he's drawn the most ownership of the three of them at 11.5%. You could probably talk me into dipping down to a little bit of Tampa 2 here as well. Obviously, again, not a great matchup score or anything like that for them, but they're continuing to chug along offensively, and they're probably a little bit snake bitten here as well. The one thing that I like about Tampa 2 tonight, some salary relief there with Michael Asimont up on that second line. Only $14,000 to full stack that trio here tonight. Asimont's a guy who great shot volume, 8.6 shots on goal per hour over his last 20. Obviously playing in depth roles, but in the games where we've seen him bumped up in the past, he does a pretty good job of trying to maintain that shot volume. So don't mind dipping down for 5% Tampa 2 here tonight as well.
Yeah, I would have liked to see Connor Geekie stay there. Their underlying metrics are a little bit better with Connor Geekie than they are Asimont, but Asimont does have decent shot volume for minimum price. I don't think I'm going to end up getting into too much. I popped up this chart here. I mean, just ridiculously good offensive metrics or defensive metrics, from the Senators as of late. The PK has been pretty good, so I probably won't get to a ton of Tampa. I'll probably be similar to you, mix them in a little bit. I don't love getting to the Sens side either. Their offense is obviously perked up as of late. Like we've seen them really just hammer Minnesota the other night. And then last night against the Predators, kind of a similar thing. They were a team that was like, in their games, they were combining for like 40 shots. And then in the last two games, they've gone for 40 shots themselves. So maybe this is an offense that's starting to perk back up on the second half of back-to-back in a difficult matchup here. I don't think I'm going to get to too much Ottawa. I don't think they're going to be slate breakers this evening. So this game doesn't draw a whole lot of my interest. The Sens, though, if you're interested, the top line drawing about 5% ownership. And then Ottawa 2, which I played a lot of on the showdown slate. I thought it was going to be enough last night because Perron and Greg did okay, but they're seeing basically no ownership at all. So the general public doesn't really love this game either. Most of the interest coming in on the two top lines at 7.5% and 5% respectively. And I'll probably maybe 5-10% Tampa 1. That's probably the extent of my exposure in this one. Actually, really quickly, just the Senators on the power play tonight, 20th best over their last 10 games. They'll go up against the 14th ranked PK. They have the 12th best advantage on the 20, 12th of 20 on this 10 game slate. Let's get to Pittsburgh and actually, before I move on, I just want to bring up the Tampa Bay Lightning power plays. They did shuffle it around a little bit, not crazy. Victor Hedman's now back up on that top unit with Point, Gensel, Chafee, and Kucherov. So no more Darren Radish to kind of give you that salary relief and that super good correlation. Still correlates very nicely at 5v5, but on the power play, not so much anymore. He correlates a little bit better with Tampa 2. Moving on now to game number 2, we got the Penguins and the Devils. The Penguins are plus 122 home underdogs, 3.3 implied total for the Devils, 2.9 implied total for the Pittsburgh Penguins. In terms of the matchups in this one, let's get back to it here. We've got, pretty ugly matchups across the board here for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pretty good matchup for the top 6 of the New Jersey Devils. The Devils obviously still without Nico Hischier tonight, but they are expected to get Eric Howla back. So they'll have a little bit of a different looking second line this evening with Howla, Timo Meier, and Dawson Mercer, although Howla officially a game time decision. So pretty good matchups on that New Jersey Devils side of things here. The underlying metrics for that top line, obviously really, really good. But the rest of this team kind of lagging behind. We really haven't seen the Devils score a whole lot. Neither one of these teams have really scored a lot as of late. Both teams really good. It's interesting, right? Both teams kind of struggling to score at 5v5. But both teams really, really good on the power play and really, really good on the penalty kill. So kind of a difficult game to forecast exactly how things are going to shake out. I feel a little bit more confident probably in the New Jersey Devils side of things tonight. But with Nico Daws getting the start, pretty average numbers in his AHL season this year and his AHL career. He's had some decent games at the NHL level, but I think that I'm going to buy back in a little bit to Pittsburgh once tonight. They just continue to play extremely well. Their underlying metrics are super good. And then this Pittsburgh 3 lineup, we loved them a couple weeks ago or maybe early last week. They absolutely flopped for us, but they continue to put up big offensive metrics. The problem is the matchup here is really brutal. So overall, Pittsburgh one still grades out third best, under 6% ownership with Dawes getting the start. I don't mind getting there. I talked about it a lot recently. I didn't love paying way up for Raquel and Russ. Their price tags are starting to come down a hair, a couple $100 each, 6,400 for Raquel, Russ at 6,500. I don't mind that pay up spot tonight. I think it's a pretty good one with Dawes getting the start. And similarly for New Jersey one, they are seeing a much higher ownership at 10.6%. Jack Hughes, one of the highest, if not the highest, owned forward on the slate tonight, $8,300. Pretty good matchup here for them. So, we've talked about it a lot. Like the Pittsburgh Penguins have struggled defensively this year, but they've been much better as of late. And then the penalty kills coming around. Trading Marcus Pettersson probably not going to help help things a lot. But I don't mind getting the two top lines here tonight at around 10%, but I'm not going to get too carried away with this game either. I think it does have the potential to be fairly low scoring if both goalies play, reasonably well.
Yeah, I agree with you here. I don't really have a whole ton of interest in this game. Not entirely loving the ownership coming in on this Devils side of things. I think 10% is a little bit high for me here in this spot on the top line. I think I'm going to be comfortable meeting the field there, but you take a look at the numbers for the Devils over their last 10 games. They've really struggled offensively as of late. 2.32 expected goals for per hour, only 2 goals for per hour. It's a little bit of a difficult spot there. Nedeljkovic has some pretty surprising splits against the Devils in his career. 4 games played, 3 wins, a shutout, 2.77 goals against average, and a 911 save percentage. So he's played really well in his games against the Devils in his career. He's a guy who obviously sees a pretty fair amount of volume this year with some of the defensive struggles that the Penguins have had. I think I'll be able to get to a little bit of New Jersey one tonight, but I don't know if I'll be getting up to that 10% mark. I also agree with you on buying back in here a little bit on this Pittsburgh one line. Their price is pretty reasonable, it feels like, at $20,400. Obviously, you mentioned Russ and Raquel's salary coming down a couple $100 each. Obviously, that's a nice little mark right there, making them just a little bit more affordable. The problem is there's just not a ton of shot volume that's coming from these 3 guys here. Rickard Raquel, 8.9 shots on goal per hour over his last 20, and both Sidney Crosby and Brian Rust have a really nice 6.9 shots on goal per hour of ice time. Would be nicer if it was a little bit higher than that, but we'll take it. Always make a joke about that whenever we can. But yeah, I've got some interest here buying back in on these guys. Again, you look at their last 10, the expected numbers are pretty strong here for the Penguins, even if they haven't been converting as of late. So I'll take the risk with Nico Dawes between the pipes tonight, get 5-10% here on Pittsburgh one. I don't mind that as a little bit of a pivot option tonight.
Yeah, I think I'd rather be over the field on Pittsburgh than New Jersey in this spot. I think it feels like a pretty good spot here for the Pens. That top line, like you said, they're generating a lot of chances as a team as a whole, and we know how good that line's been. But just to go back to New Jersey one for a second, the matchup obviously quite good. Seeing a lot of those 2 top lines here for the Pittsburgh Penguins. The top line specifically struggle. The second line not great either. Do you have any interest in getting New Jersey too? Some in the chat are interested in New Jersey too with Howla, Meyer and Mercer. I mean, they don't grade out tremendously, but I mean they're really cheap at 13,400. Not really seeing a ton of ownership. Are you going to go there at all?
I don't know. Probably not for me, to be honest with you. Erik Haula up the middle there feels a little bit bleak to me. Just really has not done anything over his last 20 games. No points whatsoever, only 5 shots on goal per hour of ice time. Obviously, he's really cheap at $2,900, but it feels like you could probably find some other options up the middle that are giving you a little bit more value there than he is. Timo Meier, obviously, I don't mind him at 6% ownership here tonight. Maybe a one-off option there, or a little mini stack of him and Mercer if I need to. But I don't know if I'll get there on the Devils' second line, and probably won't be getting there on the second line for the Penguins as well. I do have some interest here in Pittsburgh 3 going back to them. They're drawing very little ownership here, 2%. I think I'm comfortable mixing them in. $8,200 to full stack this trio of guys here. Obviously, it's a tough matchup. That kind of goes without saying here, going up against that Devils bottom 6 that has been very solid defensively as of late here. But the underlying numbers for these guys are fairly strong, all things considering. Their issue is they just really haven't been able to convert. But you're getting solid shot volume from Kevin Hayes and Anthony Beauvillier. They're probably in a little bit of a scoring slump here right now, so I don't mind them as a really cheap mini stack here tonight on this slate.
Yeah, I think you get enough volume. I mean, if you take a look here at the raw projections too, I feel like they sort out as a decent value option. Yeah, I mean, near the top here in terms of just raw projection value. They're a third line by name, but they play a decent amount of ice time. That second and third line are kind of interchangeable at 25 and 26%. So I don't mind them at all at $82,000 if you really want to pay down in a deep tournament, right? Like if you're playing one lineup tonight, Pittsburgh 3 probably not for you, but deep tournaments, I don't mind getting to them a little bit. The power plays here, like I said, both power plays have been very, very good, but both penalty kills have also been very good. So 11th out of 20 for Pittsburgh, 9 out of 20 for the New Jersey Devils. Let's get to game number 3. You've got the Buffalo Sabres and the Columbus Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are plus 158 road dogs. Then minus 177 for the Buffalo Sabres. 3.6 implied total is tied for the highest on the slate, yet projected ownership has Columbus won as the highest owned line on the slate. They're 15,300. They lose Kirill Marchenko and gain Cole Sillinger. Now, there were reports that, so last game when Marchenko got hurt, Kent Johnson was actually the one that moved up. Then in practice this morning, it was Cole Sillinger taking line rushes, but then apparently Kent Johnson mixed in some drills. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if Kent Johnson's on this line by the start of the game, or if midway through the game they start shuffling things around, just to give you a heads up. That does feel very, very possible tonight. Now, this is a really scary spot for me. I don't think I'm going to get to like literally any Columbus tonight. I don't really like this line all that much. Without Marchenko, you see the offensive metrics just absolutely crater. They're horrendous, and the matchup is obviously pretty good, right? The Sabres aren't very good defensively, but without Rowensky, without Marchenko, no Monahan, like things are starting to look bleak, and we can't just so easily forget this is a team that didn't score much on the road pretty much all season until their last few games. But that ownership seems crazy to me, and not one that I'm interested in at all. This feels like pretty safe chalk to fade for me, at least. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to get to much, if any, tonight, to be totally honest. I mean, yes, the Sabres not very good at 5v5 defensively, but I don't know how much it really matters. I just don't know if that Columbus team can generate enough without their top dog, specifically Rowensky, right? Like that is such an unbelievably massive loss. It's the same thing with Vancouver and Quinn Hughes. So with nothing really going on the power play, the Sabres penalty kill has been pretty solid as of late. I just don't think I'm going to get to much Columbus whatsoever tonight. Their metrics as a team coming in aren't that impressive either. So yeah, this feels like pretty easy chalk to fade for me. You see here, grading out as the 22nd line overall, yet seeing the number 1 ownership. So really curious why it's so high. I wonder if maybe it's going to come down a little bit. On the flip side, I really like the Buffalo Sabres in this spot, right? We've seen the Buffalo Sabres be a little bit better offensively lately. And by a little bit, I mean a lot. The 2.9 expected goals for per 60 is impressive. 3.2 goals for per 60 is dynamite. So at 5v5, they've been good against a Blue Jackets team that's not played very well defensively. And now you take out their top defenseman. I think that Buffalo is interesting. The problem now is that they also lost a top dog in Tage Thompson. And what happens is it's still going to be Yuri Kulich and JJ Peterka together on that top line, as I try to find them here. 29th on that top line. But Isaac Rosen steps up. Good young prospect, great AHL numbers. Unfortunately, not on the slate. If you'd have been $2,500 in full stacking, this line would have been super interesting. But at least you don't have to make a decision on like, should I mini stack them? Because you can't get burned by doing anything else. So Peterka and Kulich and two guys that I've been playing a lot of as of late. They've paid off well. Kulich, I talk about him all the time. Tremendous shot. Really good young player. At 10,500 to mini stack these two. Really, really interested there. The second line grades out really well as well. 16,900. Zucker, 5,400, 5.4%. 5,200 for Cousins, and Tuck at 6,300. Matchup-wise, for them, it's the number 1 matchup overall on this slate. So I really like getting to the Buffalo top 6 tonight. The power play not in the best spot. Their power play continues to be a bit of a bump on a log here, and the Blue Jackets PK has been solid, but I think the top 6 here, there's just not enough ownership pouring in. You got the second line at 5.5% and the top line, as I mentioned, 3.3%. So really like to get different spot here with Buffalo. And I think obviously it's getting super different because all the ownership seemingly coming in on the Columbus side of things. So really like Buffalo's top 6 in this spot. And I'm probably off the Blue Jackets entirely. Before I get to you really quickly, Zach, I think that gives me some reason to like Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen a lot tonight as well at $8,100. The big concern would obviously be shot volume for him, but one of the biggest favorites on the slate, just $8,100 seems like a reasonable price tag. And if this Blue Jackets lineup struggles like we think they might, like take the top 3 scorers out of any lineup in the league, they're going to struggle. So I think UPL is a pretty solid play this evening. Just a little concerned about the potential lack of shot volume. What are you thinking here about Columbus and Buffalo?
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised by the ownership numbers here, honestly. As far as I'm concerned, like the ownership numbers should be flipped here on these top lines. Give me 12-15% of Buffalo one here and give me 5% Columbus one in this spot. I've got some interest, I think, in the Columbus Blue Jackets, $15,300 to full stack that top line. But like you mentioned, man, I think you hit some really great points there when you talk about, how bleak things are starting to look there. The road struggles have been real for them this year, and losing Zach Werenski is a huge, huge loss for this team. Like, he has been a significant driver of the offense for the Blue Jackets this season. So I think I'll still get there in my 20 max at like 5%. I'm okay doing that, but I think I'm going to be well over the field on both Buffalo 1 and Buffalo 2. They both have tremendous matchups here tonight on this slate. Obviously the line stats aren't the strongest or anything like that, but you take a look at Buffalo 2 specifically, it's been an offensive heater for them as of late. 4 goals per hour over 2.4 expected goals per hour, 100% matchup score here tonight for Zucker, Cousins, and Tuck. I think this is a great spot, especially considering the fact that they're coming in as a 12th best line to target on a 12-game slate, or a 10-game slate, rather. So I've got a lot of interest here in the Buffalo Sabres, man. I'm going to be well over the field on them, I think. I really, really like this spot. You mentioned Peterka and Kulich over their last 20 games. They have been just absolutely dynamite, man. Yuri Kulich, 1.8 goals per hour, over 1.1 expected goals per hour individually. He's on a shooting heater, 18.9% versus 12.8 on the year, 9.4 shots on goal per hour. Peterka, more of his production is coming from assists, 2.2 per hour, but he's got great shot volume as well, also in that 9.1 per hour range over his last 20. So yeah, man, fire me up on the Buffalo Sabres tonight. Like, I don't think I have a whole ton more to add beyond what you said. You hit on some great points there. So, but yeah, man, like, it feels like this ownership really should be flipped here in this game. And if the public's not going to do it, then I'm happy to take a stand and do that tonight.
Yeah, and I don't think we can undersell the importance of it's not just Zach Werenski, right? Dante Fabro is also not expected to play. So they're missing their entire top pair, and that's been a dynamite top pair since Fabro joined the team. They've been really good. And I mean, you just take a look at their underlying metrics as a duo. They're really the only only defenseman on this roster outside of Jake Christensen that have a goal for share above 50%. So basically what that means is they are scoring more goals when they're on the ice than they're allowing. That's not the case for the rest of the defensemen on the roster outside of Christensen. They're either at 50% or below, which means they're giving up more goals than they're scoring when they're on the ice. So that's a huge concern for me. And I think that the Blue Jackets are going to struggle to move the puck out of their own end and really generate a whole lot tonight. So mostly off of them, honestly. But I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't be the first time that Columbus 1 burns me this evening. Just obviously with all the injuries, these are mostly projected. We don't know for sure this is what's going to look like. We were able to get a little bit of a look into what they're going to look like without Marchenko in last game, and Sillinger, Kent Johnson, Fantilli, and Veronikov for the 4 forwards. We project that it's going to be Provorov that moves up. He's projected to be the highest owned defenseman on the slate tonight as well. Denton Matejchuk would also be another guy that could potentially move up to that top power play unit tonight. He's on the top pair with Provorov as well. Matejchuk, really, really good young defenseman, not going to be very expensive tonight. What is he actually at? 3,000, I think, $3,100, and he's coming at 3.1% ownership versus Provorov at 16.1%. So I don't mind that little pivot option if you do get to some Columbus, might get to some Matejchuk one-offs tonight. But let's get to Boston, Minnesota now. When I did the charts, I was stunned that Minnesota won, graded out as the number 1 line overall. Pretty interesting to say the least. But when you dig into the numbers a little bit, the matchup here is really what's fueling a lot of this for them. They're going to see 62% of their ice time against Boston 2. That's the Elias Lindholm, Brad Marchand line. And they've been pathetic. They haven't given up many goals, which is insane because they're giving up just an absurd amount of scoring chances against. Now, the underlying metrics here for Minnesota 1 certainly don't jump off the page at you, but they play a ton and they're in a really good matchup. And then on the power play, they're also in a really good matchup, and they fully correlate on that Minnesota top power play unit. So kind of when you add all those things together, it ends up being a pretty good spot. I don't know, like me personally looking at the charts, I think sometimes I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I feel like that is exactly how I feel. I usually throw some blind trust into the numbers and just play them anyway. At 8.7%, I think I'm comfortable to get marginally over the field at about 10%, but I'm not going to just slam them in because they're the number one ranked line. I think it's a really good matchup, but like we saw this team really struggle against the Senators the other night. Now, part of that was because Ryan Hartman decided it would be super cool to pile drive Tim Stutzle's face into the ice and give them a 5-minute power play. That really kind of ended the game. So I do think that the Minnesota Wild, for coming off that loss and everything, they're going to be looking to bounce back. And this is a Bruins team, as I mentioned, the individual matchup's great. This is a Bruins team that's really struggled defensively, 2.8 expected goals against per 60 at 5v5 over the last 10 games. And the power play the penalty kill, has been horrendous. So I don't mind getting to Minnesota at all tonight. You also get Jonas Brodin back in the lineup. You get Marcus Johansson. They've got some pieces coming back, everybody basically except for Kirill Kaprizov. So I do not mind getting to the Wild top line in this one. That's probably it for me. The Bruins are garnering a lot of ownership, and people really like this top line because David Pastrnak's playing so tremendously well, and his line mates are super cheap. So 17,500 to full stack. Boston won. They graded as the 9th best line overall, but they're projected for the 3rd highest ownership overall. So definitely a bit of a chalky spot here, but I think that they're pretty reasonable as well. Their matchup not nearly as good, but their underlying metrics have been pretty solid. And then the power play matchup here is number 2 overall as well. So I think getting to the 2 top lines of this game feels fine at about 10% each. But I'm not going to get too carried away. I wouldn't be totally stunned if this is a lower scoring game. This line doesn't fully correlate on the top power play unit, but it's pretty close. So geeky on that second unit. What are your plans here? Are you buying into the charts here with Minnesota at all? Are you buying into this David Pastrnak Minnesota or Boston one heater? Also, you got Fleury and net for the Wild. What's your plans here?
Well, I think first and foremost, what we need to do at Daily Faceoff is get ourselves a shirt that says "In the charts we trust," because that's the angle that I'm taking here with Minnesota one. They're grading out as the number 1 line to target on this slate. I'm going to get over the field on them. I'm comfortable doubling up on them and trusting the charts here in this spot. Obviously, I think, the line stats obviously speak for themselves here. They've definitely had some struggles here as of late. They're still scoring at 2.9 goals per hour, which is a fairly solid clip, all things considering. The one nice thing here right now is that, even though they may not be converting as much as we would really like them to individually, you're still getting really solid shot volume from Matt Boldy and Joel Eriksson-Ek. Boldy, 9.9 shots on goal per hour. Joel Eriksson-Ek, 9.2. They're really trying to pick up some of that slack that Kirill Kaprizov has left in the wayside. And again, when you look at those metrics for Boston too, man, like they're giving up a lot of shot attempts against, a lot of scoring chances, a lot of high danger chances. Fire me up on some Minnesota one here tonight. They're coming in as the 6th most expensive line to target at $18,800. I think that's a pretty fair price point for all 3 of these guys. I think Zuccarello is probably the one that I'd be the most comfortable leaving off of the 3. His offense has taken a bit of a hit here as of late. His shot volume's down a little bit, still putting up, 1.9 apples per hour. So he's always got a chance to pay off with some assists there. But I'm comfortable getting over the field here on Minnesota one. No real interest in the 2nd or 3rd lines for them. Boston one, interesting spot. I mean, I think maybe the way to go is just maybe some mini stacks or some one-offs of David Pastrnak. $8,600. He's projecting very, very well. Obviously drawing a ton of ownership here on this slate tonight, and rightly so. I mean, he's just continuing to be a tremendous player. 8 goals and 14 points in 14 games in his career against the Minnesota Wild. I don't know how much I'm going to get there on Boston one here tonight. They do grade out well as the 9th best line to target. I'll probably get to, maybe 5-10% in a full stack and probably 5% on some mini stacks here. Probably leaning towards going the route of Pavel Zacha, 1.9 assists per hour over his last 20 games. So he's been doing a really good job of setting guys up. He just has no shot volume there. Morgan Geekie, he's obviously been scoring at a fairly good clip as of late, 1.6 goals per hour, but no shot volume to come there. So kind of a tough spot for me, honestly, to get to the field here in terms of the full stack ownership. But I've got some interest in some mini stacks and some one-off of some pasta tonight.
Give me a Boldy, Eriksson-Ek, Pastrnak stack. Leave Zuccarello off. And just to give you an idea, David Pastrnak's last 14 games, 14 goals, 13 assists, 27 points. He's been insane. During that same stretch, 11.7 goals for Morgan Geekie. But like you said, just capitalizing on everything. Only 22 shots on goal in those 14 games, shooting 31.8%. And Pavel Zacha, 3 points, 11 assists, 14 points during that stretch, but also no shot volume, just a shade over 1 shot per game. So they don't have great floors. Pastrnak is just obviously an absolute alien. On the power plays, as I mentioned, second and third best power play. So interesting spot to stack this game. I think it's kind of sneaky, but I think it could also go really, really wrong and be low scoring at the same time. Washington and Florida. Obviously, you've got Logan Thompson playing tremendously well. But I mean, you just take a look at the team chart here. This is a Capitals team that is playing well. Again, they're coming back around. But I think what's most notable is that this is a Florida Panthers team that's really starting to hit their stride here. We've seen them be kind of just lackadaisical here for the majority of the season. And, you see kind of some big games and then some not so good games. And for the most part, they've just not looked themselves where they're really starting to pick up steam and look like the dominant Florida Panthers that we saw from a season ago. I mean, these 5v5 metrics are insane. They've got room to grow here on the power play. The expected goals numbers are insane. It's not really converting. Really interested in this Florida side of things. We saw in the last game that Logan Thompson is in fact a human being and is capable of giving up more than 1 goal against in a game. So this is a somewhat interesting spot here for Florida. For me, the matchups not great on either side. But to me, if you just factor in how well that this Panthers team seems to be playing all of a sudden, I think I'm going to buy in at like 4 or 5% ownership. I'll probably get a little bit over the field. I just think this is an interesting spot. It's kind of just pure vibes for me. They don't grade out well. The matchups aren't great. The underlying metrics are definitely good, but more just a vibes play for me than anything. You still have this Ovechkin top line struggling defensively. You're still going to see, the problem is that you're not going to see a ton of that for the top 6. Like that's where most of the issue comes in terms of a matchup tonight. But as I said, the power play has been performing well up against the Washington PK. That's just 18th. They got the 7th best power play advantage tonight. The Capitals, not the most disciplined team ever. So this is more of a vibes play for me. Maybe you'll talk me out of it. I don't really play Washington whatsoever. So that's kind of my only lean in this one is the Panthers side of things. What about you?
Yeah, listen, if you want to talk about vibes, I'm vibing with the Florida Panthers right now. I had my biggest night of the year so far on Sunday night, and thanks to the Florida Panthers top line. So I'm going back to the well on them. I'll be getting over the field on them just, again, purely from a vibes perspective. I'm comfortable getting up to 10%. 10,001 or $19,100 to full stack these guys feels a little bit too cheap for me, honestly. I mean, they're coming in as the 5th most expensive line here on the slate tonight, but they should be more expensive than that. You take a look at the underlying numbers, even for this line as a whole, 2.2 goals for per hour versus 3 expected. I think we're like in the midst of that number starting to rebound here right now. Again, you look at the team metrics for these guys as well. They grid out with the highest goals for per hour over their last 10 games. The Florida Panthers do of any team on the slate here tonight. So, and even still, their expected goals for number of 3.2 is the 2nd highest, next to only the Edmonton Oilers. I like them here tonight as well. So for me, I'm comfortable getting up over the field here on Florida 1, planting my flag. They won me some big money on the weekend here. I'll go back to the well, see if they can do it again for me tonight.
We talked about it last week when this line got reunited and saying like, hey, look, like for some reason, it just hasn't really worked this year as well as it did last year. But I remember saying like, I'm going to buy into what we saw last year and imagine that this line is probably going to get back to that level. We've been talking about Carter Verhaeghe all season and just that he's been a little bit snake bitten, but the shot volume is still there. He's going to eventually just bust out. We saw that on the other night when you won all that money with him scoring a hat trick. But his last 3 games since this line was reunited, he's got 4 goals, 2 assists, 16 shots on goal in 3 games. Barkov, a goal and 5 assists, 10 shots on goal. And then Reinhart, 2 goals, 4 assists, and 8 shots on goal. So the last 3 games with this trio together, they've been really, really good. Now, one of those games was against the Kings where they didn't do a whole lot. The last 2 games were against the Blackhawks and the Islanders, who are banged up. So obviously not the most difficult matchups, definitely running into a bit of a tougher matchup tonight with the Capitals, but this is a line that's certainly feeling themselves. That's not going to draw a lot of ownership. And as you mentioned, the the salary is underwhelming, in comparison to what you would normally see, right? Like this could easily in 2 weeks time be a $24,000 line if they continue at the pace that they're at right now. That's how good they've been in the past. And, so maybe 24,000 is a touch high, but they can certainly get up there. Any interest on the Washington side of things for you? I feel like I haven't played this team in months.
Yeah, it's been tough for them. Definitely kind of cooled off here, but you take a look at the numbers for that second line. Continuing to shoot the lights out here, 6 goals, 4 per hour. I mean, I think I'm comfortable tapping in for a little bit. I don't know though. Like the more that I think about it, the more that I'm probably going to talk myself out of it. I think I'm okay getting to like maybe a mini stack or a full stack of Washington 2 here. They do grade out okay as a 21st best line to target here on the slate tonight. They're drawing legitimately no ownership here in this spot whatsoever. I think this game does have a fairly high pace score too, if my memory serves me correct. It does, 98.3. That's going to be one of the higher here on this slate. So I think you could probably talk me into like 5% Washington 2, maybe 5% Washington 1, but it does feel pretty bleak here, right? And the power play matchup is not great for them either here in this spot. 22nd ranked power play over their last 10 games, going up against the 7th ranked penalty kill. Both teams do take a pretty high amount of penalties, so maybe they could have some success there. But again, it doesn't feel like the Capitals power play is as potent as it's been in recent years at any point this season, even when they were really running hot earlier this year. So, I think I might get to like 5-10% Washington here tonight, but I'm probably going to end up fading them.
Yeah, I think the problem is they're one of those teams are turning into one of those teams where it's really difficult to pinpoint where the production is going to come from, right? And then you factor in Sergei Bobrovsky's been very, very good as of late, but obviously not the most difficult matchups either. But talking about a guy feeling himself right now, 4-0 in his last 4 games with a .953 save percentage. Some cushier matchups to be sure, but starting to play better. The Islanders and the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights are -144 road favorites. The Islanders just extremely banged up, man. Like, got a feel for this team. They're rattling off all these wins, and then they just can't seem to stay healthy. Matt Barzal might be done for the year by the sounds of things. Just look at this injury report. It's bonkers. So missing 1, 2, 3, 4 of their starting 6 defensemen from the start of the season. They've done a pretty nice job patchworking it, all things considered. Like Tony DeAngelo has been a welcome addition. Adam Boquist, Scott Perunovic, an entirely new right side of that blue line, and they've done okay, which is impressive. But the matchups here are one of the highest pace games of the night. Matchup for the top line is really good. The problem is without Matt Barzal up there, the numbers do take a pretty significant dip at 5v5. They're not terrible though; they're okay. Really, based on the matchups, there's probably not a whole lot of reason to get to that Brock Nelson line. They're going to be in tough against that Thomas Hertl line that's had a lot of success as of late. Then the third line's been surprisingly good for the Islanders. These underlying metrics are superb. The problem is they don't really have the finishing ability, so don't know how much I'm going to get there. But Islanders won, based on the charts, do look somewhat intriguing tonight. But even with that, where do they grade out? 5th best overall, 15,100, seeing 6% ownership. I don't mind getting to Horvat, Duclair, and Lee a little bit tonight, but probably won't get too carried away. I think most of my intrigue, shocker, still comes on Vegas too. Matchup-wise, it's really solid here. They've been red hot. I don't like the Vegas top line quite as much with Keegan Colasar and Ivan Barbashev up there. I mean, I barely played them when they had Mark Stone up there. So the fact that Keegan Colasar is up there really limits their offensive upside, in my opinion. And you can see it here in the underlying metrics being pretty poor. The second line continues to play well. Like their matchup, I don't mind getting to Vegas too. But as a whole, this game doesn't intrigue me that much. Both goaltenders playing supremely well. It's really hard to stack against Ilya Soroka right now with as well as he's played. But it's kind of hard to ignore the price tag still of the top line of the second line, the Vegas Golden Knights, right? They're not moving at all. Hertl at just $5,300. Dorofeyev at just $5,600. And then you take a look at the power play tonight. It is been red hot. The Islanders PK has played well, but at times this Islanders PK has struggled this year. So it's the hottest power play in the league right now. Don't mind going back to Hertl and Dorofeyev mini stacks. That's probably the majority of my exposure in this game. Maybe a little bit of New York one, but I usually end up talking myself out of that. How about you?
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think I'm comfortable getting to some Vegas here tonight for sure, centering around that second line as well. Colasar and Barbashev up there with Eichel feels pretty gross to play either of those guys. So, I think for me, maybe just go with a bit of a onslaught power play type stack where, you got Vegas 2, you throw Jack Eichel on there, you throw Shea Theodore on there, you call it a day there with a little bit of an onslaught. That's probably the limit of my interest here in this Vegas side. I really don't like the look of this top line whatsoever. Obviously, Brandon Saad coming in, sliding in on that third line there. He's had some solid shot volume when he was with the Blues here over his last 20 games, but it feels pretty bleak down there for that third line right now as well. The Islanders, their top line, grading out as the fifth best line to target. Maybe I'll get there at like 5%. Anders Lee and Bo Horvat, maybe a little mini stack of those two guys. Prices are fairly reasonable on those two guys because they have been productive over their last 20 games. Anders Lee and Horvat, both 1.5 goals per hour of ice time, both between 9.5 and 10 shots on goal per hour as well. So I think there's a little bit of reason to have some interest in this Islanders top line, but I don't think I'll be getting anything over the field, which is at 5.9% right now.
Okay, we got some breaking news here. We might need to walk back some of the stuff we said earlier in the show. The Sabres recalled Felix Sandstrom from Rochester. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen unavailable to play tonight due to a minor injury. James Reimer gets the start for Buffalo versus the Blue Jackets. Boy. I mean, I think that's going to just make the chalk even higher and give you even more leverage if they flop. But boy, fading them suddenly becomes a lot scarier. Maybe I'll mix in a little bit more Columbus, but I still think that team's going to struggle to generate much offense tonight. Hopefully I'm right. Does that change your feelings at all?
Honestly, not really. Like, if anything, maybe it just makes me want to take a harder stand on them or just be a little firmer in my beliefs. I wouldn't be surprised if that 12.7% ownership jumped up to like 16. I don't think that would be a huge jump or anything like that. It would probably eat away, obviously, at some of the other higher ownership that's coming in on this slate tonight. James Reimer, goes without saying he's not great, but again, for all the reasons that we talked about,
he's Columbus, been okay lately though. Like his last five outings, 915 save percentage. It's pretty good.
Good. There you go. I mean, yeah, I think if anything, it just maybe firms up my belief of fading Columbus one. I'm still going to mix them in a little bit. Like I'll probably be around that like 5 to 8% on them as a whole in terms of full stacks. But yeah, I don't know if I'll get anything over that.
If Reimer was basically 0%, will you play him? Okay, I don't like him that much. Maybe a little bit. Like he's gonna be like $8,100 though. It's a lot more difficult to pay up for him than it is UPL, in my opinion. Especially if I think the upside's somewhat limited, given, like I said earlier, the lack of shot volume. So, I mean, if he's 0%, maybe a little bit, but even that doesn't feel amazing. Okay, Winnipeg and Carolina. Two very good defensive teams. The matchups here are pretty brutal on both sides. I guess they're pretty good on the top six for the Hurricanes here, which is interesting. That is a top line for the Jets that has struggled defensively. The second line kind of meh. Really not going to play Carolina 2. They don't do anything, but Carolina 1 definitely looks like they're in an interesting spot tonight. With Eric Comrie expected to get the start, that definitely perks my interest in Carolina 1. They grade out 11th best. Jackson Blake's been really solid on that top line, $3,800. Aho at 6,700, excuse me, and then Rantanen under 8K. What? Who would have thought? We talked about that last week and said it's coming, and here it is. 18,300 feels good. That line at 4.1%. I think they're a very interesting play tonight with Comrie getting the start. The matchup looks really good. As I said, they're going to see basically 75% of their ice time is going to come against that top six for the Jets. The top line struggles a little bit defensively. Second line, not great either. So really, really interesting spot here for Carolina 1. I don't mind getting to them whatsoever. Without the Adam Lowry, without Adam Lowry in the lineup, they don't match up that third line against the opposition's best. And playing in Winnipeg is not quite as challenging. I'm certainly interested to get to Carolina 1. It's already been 43 minutes, Zach. We do got to pick up the pace here. What are your thoughts on Winnipeg and Carolina?
Yeah, I don't mind what you're saying here at all. I think I'm comfortable getting over the field on Carolina 1. It looks like a pretty solid spot for them, projecting at just 4.1% ownership. Fire me up for some Carolina 3, $11,900. Price is starting to creep up a little bit. That's largely in thanks to Seth Jarvis there being 6K. They're just consistently a great value option on pretty much any given slate. And once again, they look like they're a solid value option as far as I'm concerned here tonight. So I'll be getting to both of those lines, maybe mixing in like 5% Winnipeg 1, 2. They're just so good offensively. And like, obviously it goes without saying that the Carolina Hurricanes have had some struggles defensively, just giving up a lot of goals in that top six here as of late. So the power play continues to chug along and be tremendous. They're just going up against a electric Carolina Hurricanes penalty kill. Just a bunch of jerks over there in Carolina.
Haven't heard that one in a minute. But yeah, let's just bring up the team chart here really quickly. I mean, there's a reason both teams don't have really good matchups. These 5v5 defensive numbers for both sides, just tremendous. This is just two really, really good hockey teams duking it out tonight. So yeah, I don't expect this to be super high scoring, but with Eric Comrie getting the start, it pulls me back in on Carolina 1 just a little bit. St. Louis and Edmonton. Oh man, every time I say we got to pick up the pace, the Edmonton game pops up. 3.6 implied total for the Oilers, the tie for the highest on the slate, -177 road favorites. Yeah, so the Blues made our job relatively easy tonight. They put Kyrou, Buchnevich, and Thomas back together, leaving Dylan Holloway with Shen and Texier, and Neighbors, Sundquist, Bolduc on the second line. So we've got, matchup-wise, pretty bleak for the top line of the Oilers, but I don't think it really matters, to be honest with you. They're just so good. Pretty decent matchups for the top 6 for the Blues. I don't think that I'm going to get to too much St. Louis, but it is interesting to note that this top line with Buchnevich, Thomas, and Kyrou together, they've been just absolutely dynamite, just super, super dominant this year, offensively, defensively. It's like, how do you ever break this line up? I mean, I remember earlier in the year, they were dominating, and then the rest of the lineup just did nothing. So that's why they broke them up. And they were able to find something on that Shen line, but then the Thomas line didn't do anything. So they've just been a one-line team, no matter who it is, basically this entire season. But yeah, the top 6 or top 9 here for the Oilers doesn't grade out very well defensively, just with the new configuration. We kind of saw that against the Maple Leafs the other night, but I still don't have a ton of interest in the Blues. But this top line's somewhat interesting at 2%. Graded as the 4th best line overall. I'll probably buy in a little bit there, just kind of, again, trust the charts on this one. But it does seem super easy to get back to the top line of the Edmonton Oilers, 20,300. Obviously, Draisaitl, McDavid, what they combined for like 17 shots on goal against the Maple Leafs. They should have had a goal if John Klingberg could have just stayed on side. So getting back to them, the price tag still feels way too cheap on Leon Draisaitl, given how well he's played. And then the Blues penalty kill is 30th over the last 10 games. So whenever you've got a penalty kill that's struggling up against the Oilers, that feels like a good spot. The only thing that the Oilers really have going, or the Blues have going for them, is they are pretty disciplined. But yeah, I think that I'm assuming that you're going to get to like 20% Edmonton 1 tonight.
Yeah, probably something in that range for me, honestly. That's pretty much standard for me with the Edmonton Oilers. Listen, I'm going to throw a couple of numbers at you of just Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl when they're together on the ice. 300 minutes so far this season for those two guys together. 83.9 shot attempts per hour of ice time, 5 goals per hour of ice time, 4.29 expected goals, 42 scoring chances for, and 17 high danger scoring chances for. Obviously, Corey Perry there is going to drag those numbers down a little bit, but it just speaks to how good these two guys are when they are on the ice together at 5-on-5. So I have no issue getting well over the field on the Edmonton Oilers top line, especially when these guys are playing together here, Connor and Leon. So keeping it pretty simple for you there. I've got some interest in the second line of the Edmonton Oilers here tonight. They actually are grading out with the best matchup of any of the Edmonton Oilers here tonight. 67% matchup score. They look like they're in a really nice spot at 5-on-5. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Zach Hyman, you're obviously going to have some correlation between those two guys on the power play as well. Nugent-Hopkins has been on a heater as of late. 1.5 goals per hour over his last 20 games, 22 shooting percentage against 14% on the season. Zach Hyman continuing to chug along offensively. Then you got Victor Arvidsson there, $3,900, just continuing to give you a solid floor with shot volume. So I'm going to be comfortable getting, a pretty healthy amount of Edmonton 1 here, obviously, but also this second line too. You talk about that power play matchup tonight. I don't mind the idea whatsoever of Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, mini stack, throw Evan Bouchard in there as well if you want to. I think that's a really nice way to build tonight. The St. Louis side of things, fire me up on some of this top line, honestly. They're only projecting for 2% ownership, coming in as the 4th best line to target on this slate. These 3 guys have been an absolute nightmare for opponents in the past, and a line that we played a lot in recent years, right? $16,300 to full stack these guys. All 3 of them are basically a point per game against the Edmonton Oilers in their career. And I could see that being the case again here tonight, where they score a goal or two. Might be the only offense that the Blues are able to generate tonight. But I have a feeling if there is goals coming from the St. Louis side, it's coming from that top line.
Yeah, and like we just talked about it, like Buchnevich and Thomas have struggled as of late. That's really dragged their price tag down. 4,600 for Buchnevich, 5,500 for Robert Thomas, and yeah, 2% ownership. I don't mind taking a stand here at the number 4 line overall. These two teams met earlier in the year. 4-2 win for the Oilers. 2 assists that night for Draisaitl, goal and assist for Connor, goal for Leon. goal for Hyman, and a goal for Corey Perry. And he wasn't on the top line that night, I'm assuming. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, I've always feel like the top or like the that Nugent Hopkins line doesn't have the best metrics away from Connor McDavid, but they look okay this year. A little bit better. They've done it a little bit more frequently as well. So it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of continue. And then, like you said, the top power play unit correlation always helps. Where do they grade out here? 28th best, very little ownership, very cheap. Don't mind it. Okay. 2 more games to go here. Calgary and Toronto. The Oilers, the Maple Leafs are minus 135. Road favorites, 3.1 implied total. So we aren't sure if Mitch Marner is going to play. He's listed as a game time decision, but he didn't practice yesterday and he didn't skate in the morning skate. These lines look like they're preparing to be without him. These power play units look like they're preparing to be without him. So I would imagine he doesn't play. He's not included in the charts. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, also a game time decision. Matchups for this one, pretty good matchups for the top 6 of the Flames. The Tavares line draws the much better matchup for the Maple Leaf side of things. Obviously, with the Michael Backlund line going head to head with Matthews tonight, that's going to make things a little bit more difficult for Matthews and company. That being said, a little bit surprised to how good the metrics look for Austin Matthews' line. He's just kind of so good. He just does it with whoever. So with Knives and Domi, the metrics are still pretty solid here. They still only grade out 15th best because the matchup's not great, but 60,600 a full stack of Matthews' line feels okay. They're grading out Matthews at about 12%, the other two about half the ownership of him. So mostly just Matthews one-offs tonight. I don't know how much I'm going to get there. The Flames are super stingy at home ice. Dustin Wolf's been awesome, but I don't mind maybe getting to a little bit of Toronto 1. Toronto 2, as I mentioned, the better match of the two. They grade out 8th best, 17,700. 5% ownership for Tavares and Nylander. Nylander is playing tremendously well. Just $7,300 feels really affordable. Same with Tavares at $6,300. I don't mind getting to Toronto 2 tonight. As I said, that matchup is quite nice. They're going to see 61% of their ice time against the Nazem Kadri line. Pretty, not terrible defensive metrics, but actually, I mean, it's only super small sample size. But since Farabee got traded there, that line struggled a little bit in what their first, I think they played 1 or 2 games with Farabee. Again, it's way too small of a sample size to take too much from, but we saw the Red Wings have success against the Flames. Won't be surprised if Toronto 2 could do some damage as well. And then they also have the number 6 power play advantage on the slate. But the Flames, the number 1 power play advantage of the night, the Maple Leafs penalty kill, really struggling as of late. Pretty good matchups in the top 6 for the Flames as well. So kind of interesting here. I don't know how much of the Backlund line I'm going to get to tonight. Just going to have their hands full with Matthews. But, I've been playing a ton of them. I'll probably still get back to it just because their price tag is so affordable. It is coming up. I don't mind the Coronado Coleman mini stack. Backlund's really not done a whole lot. But I think most of my interest comes in here on Huberdeau, Kadri, and Farabee. Really, really low ownership. They've all played really well. Kadri's been on a bit of a heater. Farabee seems to be fitting that lineup nicely. But again, this Flames team is somewhat limited in their offensive upside. So I think it's hard to kind of win tournaments with this team. Both teams really struggling to generate much offense at 5v5. But both teams looking pretty good on the power play. So I think there's some upside here. I just don't know how much I'm going to end up getting there. There's going to be sprinkled in. How about you?
Yeah, I think for me, most of my interest in this game is coming in Calgary 1 and coming in on Toronto 2. The Maple Leaf second line, Tavares, Nylander, McCann. These guys have been great so far together. So
Patch ready there tonight, though.
Oh, right. Patch ready. My bad. Read my own charts wrong there. Nonetheless, my point still stands about Tavares and Nylander. And both of those guys have had success against the Flames in their career. Of course, Nylander, Calgary native. He's had 22 games played, 8 goals and 26 points. John Tavares, 31 games played, 11 goals and 29 points as well. I've got some interest there. I'll probably be heavier on Toronto 2 than I am Toronto 1. Probably just flip-flop their ownership, 7.6 on the top line. 4.5 on the second line. I'm comfortable flopping those numbers around. On the Calgary side of things, it does feel a little bit tough to get to them here tonight, but I do have some interest in that top line. Kadri and Huberdeau, both, again, they've also guys who've had success against the Leafs. Kadri in his career, 4 goals and 9 points in 8 games, 13 goals and 32 points and 34 for Jonathan Huberdeau. So we're getting a little tight on time, so I'm just going to keep it short and sweet for these guys. And that's how I'm looking at this game.
Kadri's been a point per game over his last 7. The only issue I have with Kadri tonight that price tag starting to come up a little bit. 6,600 starting to get a little pricey. Final game of the night. Well, final game of the show. Utah and Philadelphia. The Utah Hockey Club -140. They will get Dylan Guenther back tonight, which is a huge addition for them. He's going to slot in on the second line with Barrett Hayton and Michael Carconi. You've got Michelli, McBain, Doan now together on the third line. They're going to keep Keller, Kerfoot, Schmaltz together on the top line. Matchups in this one, a little bit difficult for the top line, but the middle six here have really, really solid matchups. It won't show up on the charts. I didn't know what to do with it, but we saw a decent amount of Michelli, McBain, Doan together last year. Their numbers were insane. They had like a 4.0 expected goals for per 60 in like 90 minutes. They are low-key sneaky tonight. They're going to see a lot of this middle six of the Flyers, particularly the second line. But the third line's been really bad for the Flyers. The second line grades out below average. I think that this is a sneaky good play here with Utah 3 that's going to see literally no ownership whatsoever. They're projected for 2.3%. Michelli, McBain, Doan, 11,200. I think they're kind of like my sneaky play of the day. I'm going to get to them. Not like a crazy amount, but I don't mind getting to them whatsoever in a deep tournament field as a super low owned option. I don't mind Utah 2 either. As I mentioned, they're going to see a lot of that second and third line, and that second and third line for the Flyers has struggled a lot defensively. Getting Guenther back is going to be a huge addition. Hayton's played really well since basically moving off of that Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz line. Carconi's a guy with a lot of shot volume at $2,900, so they're super affordable as well. Really like the Utah Hockey Club for some really cheap value tonight. And the top line looks okay. Just the matchup's a lot more difficult. You got to pay a lot more. I like the value you get in the middle six more than paying up for Utah 1 tonight for me. And then it's super interesting. Philadelphia 1 here. The matchup is solid. They're going to see a lot of the top 6 here for the Utah Hockey Club. Grades out just slightly below average defensively. But like we've talked about really liking this Flyers line of Forrester, Brink, and Cates. Now it's Forrester, Cates, and Konechny. And without some of the, trade pieces in the lineup yet, this is a really thinned out Flyers lineup, and we saw it show up in the box score the other night. Like Forrester played, I'll have to pull up the numbers, but they played an absolute shit ton of ice time. So Forrester logged 23 and a half minutes the other night. You've got Cates at 20 minutes and 30 seconds, and Konechny was at 25 minutes and 16 seconds. I mean, they played an insane amount of ice time, and if that's the case again tonight, which I imagine it will be, that's a line that's got definitely enough offensive chops to get the job done. We know what Cates and Forrester can do together. Getting connecting on that line gives them a little bit more offensive jam. They grade out 10th best. Really seeing no ownership at all. If they're playing 23 minutes at 13,800, I don't know how it can really go wrong. So super interested in that Flyers top line as a value, low owned option as well. You take a look here. Both teams have been pretty solid defensively as of late, but I think it's kind of an intriguing game here to get at low ownership. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you here. It looks like a really interesting spot on both sides. You talk about the depth on the Utah side of things, and you mentioned having more interest in the second and third lines. And I think the line stats, for these guys back it up, right? Most of those goals are coming from the second and third lines here, based on these numbers. So I'll probably be comfortable mixing in more Utah 2 and 3 than I would be that top line. But that top line is still coming in as the 7th best line to target overall on this slate tonight. All 3 lines are seeing very, very little ownership. So I think I'm going to be comfortable getting in on this Utah side of things, 5-10% ownership for each line. And for me, that Philadelphia top line, I've got quite a bit of interest in getting over the field on them as well here tonight. This game doesn't have the highest pace score or anything like that, but, we've talked a lot about playing Noah Cates and Tyson Forrester as Philadelphia 3 as kind of some punt options. Their salaries are pretty much the same. And now they're getting Travis Konechny, the Flyers, arguably their best offensive player this season. He's in a bit of a slump right now offensively. The shot volume hasn't really been there over his last 20 games, but it feels like a spot where that could kind of rebound here. So, I've got some interest in both sides of this game.
Worth mentioning, the Flyers have been shut out in 3 consecutive games, and then they scored 4 goals in the game before that, and then prior to that, just 1-1. So they have just 6 goals in their last 6 games. Really, really ugly. So just keep that in mind. That's why they're seeing such little ownership. But I mean, if you give that line, it's got enough talent at 23 minutes tonight, definitely to get to do some damage. Hopefully. Okay, let's get to some defensemen and goalies really quickly. We are not going to have a DFO head-to-head today, and we are also We'll do our hat trick pick challenge really quickly. But as I mentioned, Ivan Provorov grades out really nicely tonight. A little bit more interest in him and Matejchuk now that James Reimer gets the start, but still not that interested in stacking the Blue Jackets. Let's sort by value really quickly here. So Owen Power, I really like him. He's been grading out tremendously well. Tyson Barrie back in the lineup tonight seems okay. Severson can be kind of thrown in that same boat as the other Columbus defenseman. Thomas Chabot, really, really cheap. Jake Sanderson's been unbelievable for the Sens as of late as well. Jake McCabe, super cheap. Brodin back in the lineup at $3,700. Pionk is just ridiculously cheap. Terrible matchup, but he's like outrageously cheap. Zadorov, same thing. I mentioned Matejchuk. Jake Sanderson, red hot. Darren Radish, not quite as much value without that top power play unit exposure. But who really sticks out to you tonight in terms of the best value options?
Yeah, a couple of interesting dumpster dive options. Tyson Barrie, minimum price, $2,500. Not played a ton as of late in his tenure in Calgary, but he's still seeing quite a bit of ice time here. Projected for 17 minutes. Great shot volume and block volume from him. 8.0 shots on goal per hour, 4.6 blocks. Don't mind that at all. Zadorov, $2,600. Trevor Van Riemsdyk are also looking like some solid value plays down there that are a little bit cheaper. So those are some guys that I've got interest in. Jake McCabe looks like he's probably in a good spot as well. At $3,100. Chris Tanev, another shot block god there.
I was just gonna say, you got the Tanev revenge narrative too.
That's right. Gives them all the motivation to hit the shot block bonus tonight.
What do you think about? I forgot to ask this earlier, but we saw Holloway score on 5 shots in his first meeting with the Oilers earlier this season. Any love for Dylan Holloway and Broberg revenge narratives there against your Oilers?
Listen, man, there's nothing that ex-Oilers love to do more than score against the Edmonton Oilers. So fire up me on a Holloway and a Broberg anytime goal tonight.
Coolidge for a point tonight. I do like that. I don't know what the odds are, but I think that he's in a really good spot tonight. Okay, let's move to some goalies really quickly, and we'll get you on your way building some lineups. I got to do the same. So let's get out of here. We've got Andrei Vasilevsky projected to be the best goalie overall tonight against the Sens. Bit of a dicey play at $8,300. Joseph Woll, really nice matchup there with the Flames. Should see plenty of shot volume at $8K. He's playing tremendously well. Really like him. He looked tremendous against the Oilers the other night. Nico Daw is a little too expensive for my taste. Probably the same for Stuart Skinner. Kachekov seems like a reasonable play. He's kind of difficult to trust. I think that Aiden Hill ownership is a little too low. I thought he'd be a little bit higher. Probably not going to see the most volume, but really nice price tag on him against an Islanders team that's super banged up right now. Logan Thompson is always a good play at $7,800. It's hard to pass up that salary relief. Don't mind Marc-Andre Fleury either. Dustin Wolf, $7,400 without if Mitch Marner doesn't play, feels great. Merzlikins, what do you think about Merzlikins? He's played pretty well as of late. $7,300. No Tage Thompson. Could somewhat see it. Yeah. How about you? Who do you like tonight? I'm going to go with mostly Joseph Woll, Aiden Hill. I don't mind Sorokin at $7,900 either. And Dustin Wolf. He just always kind of piques my interest.
Yeah, I think I like some of these kind of mid-price goaltenders tonight. Like Aiden Hill at $7,500 looks pretty appetizing. You could talk me into some Marc-Andre Fleury at $7,500. Logan Thompson at $78 feels like a pretty solid play there tonight too. For me, Dustin Wolf at $7,400, I really like that spot here tonight. You talk about Merzlikins. I think I just pay the extra $100 more for Dustin Wolf there. Feels like a bit of a safer option there. You're going to see more volume there. Probably too. You might be able to talk me into some Nedeljkovic at $7,200 as well. Just obviously at $8K looks like a pretty great play here tonight. Not really loving many of those expensive goalies tonight.
No, yeah, it looks like a kind of maybe not full pay down, but in that mid-tier range. There's a lot of quality, and you're seeing that with the ownership, like Joseph Woll, Logan Thompson, two of the higher owned goalies on the slate. Are they the two highest? Vasilevsky in the mix as well as the most expensive. Aiden Hill, yeah. Okay. Let's get to the hat trick pick challenge. If you want to participate in today's hat trick pick challenge, all you got to do is drop your hat trick pick in the comment section of the video on YouTube. If your player scores a hat trick, get you a $25 gift card to nationgear.ca. You can pick up some DFO swag like this hat here. Bang. My hat trick pick for tonight, give me Travis Konechny. That top line looks fine tonight. You said he's ice cold. I'm going to say slump buster for Travis Konechny tonight. How about you?
Don't mind that one whatsoever. Talk about guys that are in a little bit of a slump right now. Carter Verhaeghe kind of broke out of it with a hat trick the other night.
Back-to-back Hatties?
No, we're gonna go Alexander Barkov because he's another guy who's slumping. But get some more of that Florida 1 exposure.
There you have it. That's going to do it for this edition of the DFO DFS report. Now, if you want to participate in the Hat Trick Pick Challenge, like I said, in the comment section, you can pick anybody from the 14 games. Doesn't have to be just this slate. Any of the 14 games for tonight will be counted. That's going to do it. Shout out to our friends at rotogrinders.com for providing projected ownership for today's show. Couldn't do it without them. If you want to get $20 off your first month of Rotogrinders NHL Premium, you can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Also, down there is the link to our DFO DFS Discord. Come on, join the community that's growing every single day. Provide a lot of the late breaking news and warm-ups to make sure you don't have any holes in your lineup. We're also talking DFS all day long, bouncing ideas back and forth off of each other. I provide a little bit of extra content in there as well, especially during the weekend. So come on in, join the Discord as well. And while you're there, I mean, you're here already. We've got over 1,200 people watching right now. Shout out to you guys on Twitter and or X and YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please smash that like button. It'd be much appreciated as we continue to help grow this show. Thank you guys so much. We will see you guys back here tomorrow. Until then, cheers.
Cheers.